Hello everybody, this is Aripsuyas here, and today I'm going to continue my series with Cisco Manager Express, or CME. And what we're going to do today is, rather than having phones on the same router, we're actually going to expand our network. We're going to bring up a secondary router, and we're going to introduce the concept of Dialpeers. The easiest way or technical definition of Dialpeers is that they define voice reachability. But if you understand that, then that makes sense. But if you haven't done Dialpeers before, just understand it helps define how you can speak to other phones on the network. Okay, basically, especially now when we added our phones on our R1, Dialpeers were created automatically. They just know each other. Kind of the idea that if you have a bunch of devices on the same physical switch and network, they generally don't need help reaching each other, aside from the fact they need an IP on a common subnet, or they might need some routing. But generally they'll just work, right, if you give them the same subnet. But with Dialpeers, they're required because if you're trying to reach another destination, and it's especially used when you're reaching destination outside of your norm, right? So where Dialpeers would not be automatically added, we're obviously dialing things like extensions that are off-site, right? Office to office, maybe department to department. It all depends on how your topology is, right? You could have multiple CME routers at different locations, and this is the way of making them talk. Another common thing is if you maybe just have one large office and you have one CME router, that CME router to talk to the outside world is going to need a Dialpeer. Now I'm going to do another video on that and how you can make a Dialpeer to reach the PSTN, but in this scenario we're talking about how you reach other extensions on other sites. Okay, so how do we do that? Number one, okay, we have an R1 from last time. Okay, so we still have the R1. What we need to do is edit our dynagen.conf and bring up a secondary router. Okay, so the way I'm going to do that is I have all my stuff here in the home directory inside router. Right, if you do an ls here, I have all my files here, but all we care about right now is the dynagen.conf that we're going to use. Okay, so I'm just calling mine a read with our onerouter.conf. Now, so where people sometimes go wrong a bit here, I might tell you to just copy your R1. I've seen some people actually copy their information for Dynamips. And what you're doing is just redeclaring things here. And you don't want to do that. To make a new router, all we actually need to do is just copy your R1 config is the easiest way. Now this assumes this is okay because I want my secondary R2 to be the same router, right? And to be the same image, right? So we just defined our router here, our 7200 as I call it, right? Based on this image here, c7200.bin, right? I specified idle PC. So all this is fine to keep, right? Because I'm obviously on the same CPU. Idle PC will work because I'm using the same image. So that's going to be all good. So I've copied that, and let's just make a new config here. Okay, so let's paste that in, but obviously I can't use the exact same config or it's going to do nothing for me. I don't think any harm will be caused here. Just going to redefine the same R1 and kind of overwrite it, right? But what we want is an R2. So I'm going to call R2, change the name from R1 to R2, and one other thing as well, console. Well, we can't have more than one thing sharing the port, right? So I'm just going to make the console for R2 2522. Generally you can make almost anything your console port, so long as it's not used. Okay, one more thing though. Now we're using the NIO_tap device. But I have tap 1 here. Once again, you can't use the same tap, right? That's not going to work. So I'm going to use a secondary tap device. I'm going to call it tap 2, although I could call it almost anything. Okay, so I define that. What else do I need to do? Okay, well we had R1 here, but the thing is that we need our R2 to get going. Okay, so R2 is now started, and we're just going to wait for it to get booted up here. How do I telnet into it? Telnet localhost 2522, and we're going to wait for it to boot up here. Okay, so we're booted up in here into R2. You know what? All I actually want to do is just get an IP going at the moment for this router. So I'm not going to enter the initial config dialog again. I think it's just quicker just to manually do it here. So we'll do our enable mode, okay, conf int fa00, and recall we're using fa00 because this is the interface that's going to be on our tab 2. Okay, so let's give it an IP. Give it a no shut. And so guys, the reason that I'm doing this here, I just want to give it an IP that nothing else is using for sure, that I know nothing else is using. So it's not really a big deal about what IP you use. It just should be reachable. Now we're not going to do any routing between the routers, so I put this in the same range. If you recall from the previous video, my R1 is 192.168.5.1. Okay, but we do need to do a little bit of config on here. And one more thing I'll talk about after, this router is not going to be reachable just yet. I'm going to explain why. Even though we've given an IP, we have to do our normal kind of Linux network setup, and I'll just talk about that in 1 second here. So let's do our telephony service though. Let's get that going. Okay, and let's do max ePhones 20 just for fun. We're not going to have more than one phone at this point though. I'll do IP source address. Once again, this IP source address must be the IP of this router. Otherwise, if I specify the source address as .1, what's going to happen is if you hit this router, right, if a phone hit this router, it's actually being told at that point then to then register with R1, which is not what we want to do. Right, kind of defeats the purpose at this point of what we're trying to do here. Let's give it max DN to 25. And another thing I'm going to change here is system message. Let's make it R1 Real Tech Talk. Oh, sorry, R2 Real Tech Talk. Okay, and we'll call it void. That's our system message. Now the reason I recommend doing this on R2, that's so we know when we connect to it that we are on R2. We have no doubt about it, right? Whereas the other router is going to say R1. Okay, so now the same old thing. We're going to do create CNF files. So now we are generally ready here to get registered, but one more thing. Okay, let's get this fresh here. I need to get my network up. Now for this I just made a very simple script. Okay, and actually just have a typo in my script here. I put a burp when it's supposed to be a BR0. Okay, but the point here guys is that what you want to do is you need to add your tap 1 and tap 2 to your bridge. Now I made another video before as well about how you create that bridge, but just to understand for now, we have a tap 1 and tap 2. The way that they talk to the outside world or outside machines is through this BR0 bridge that I've created here. So it's important to remember, sometimes people forget when you're bringing your routers up, let's just say you even killed Dynagen right now or killed Dynamips and restarted. Each time you restart your routers, and unless you do like a soft reset from the router itself, you've got to re-bring up your tap 1 and tap 2, which means adding the tap 1 and tap 2 to your bridge, and also actually manually bringing up the interface. So another thing I see people do, sometimes people type if up, tap 1, if up tap 1. That doesn't work because it's not a traditional interface that's defined. So it's not going to work. So, but all I do, I just do network up. Okay, and at that point, one thing too, I always recommend people troubleshoot, do an if config. If you do an if config and you don't see tap 1 and tap 2, it means they're not up. And so one mistake sometimes people make is sometimes they will do a BRCTL show and say, okay, yeah, I do see that they are on my bridge. Yes, they are. But if I didn't bring them up like I did in my script there, I wouldn't see them in if config. So if they're not up, they're not working. So one more piece of troubleshooting. Now I want to make sure I can actually reach that router. Can I do that? Okay, good. I'm able to ping it. Okay, so we are now on the way. I want to take one of my CIPC phones now and let's get it on this R2 router. Okay, let's take CIPC number 2 and let's open up IP communicator here. Let's get it going and let's watch. I want you guys to watch the console as we're trying to get it going here. CIPC startup here. Okay, so I put it on R1. It's called Arib R1 as a system message. So that's why I like to do that. So if you guys recall, I said in a system message here that said R2 Realtek Talk VoIP. Right, so I know I haven't hit it. And another common mistake people made sometimes that happens that you think you're on one router and you're not. I also have default TFTP servers. I have actually now disabled my DHCP on R1. And so that's not going to be automatic, and the reason is because it's going to break things. So I'm going to tell it to manually hit my R2. Remember guys, .200 is the IP of my R2, so let's see what happens now. Okay, so it's going to reboot because I gave it a new IP, and it's going to try and hit that TFTP server. Let's see, how does it work? Okay, good. So I've hit it because it says R2 Realtek Talk VoIP. So that's what I want to see. Now, one other thing I'm going to show you guys is, if you notice, I didn't flash this router with this CME GUI. As you probably know, we don't need the GUI. I think it's a great way to get started to kind of visually see maybe how you can add a phone and add a number or extension, if you will. But we really don't actually need to do that. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys what I mean here. Let's do a few things. Why don't we first, what can we do here? We can add ePhone DN1. Okay, let's do that. Okay, and I'm going to call this number, how about 4,000? 4,000 and 777, okay? Could be any number pretty much. And let's also now go into our ePhone 1. Okay, and so, sorry guys, one more thing. We know it's ePhone 1 because we saw it here in our console. Okay, because it says registered new ePhone 1. And we want to be sure of the phone once again, though. It has the SEP and has the MAC address. Okay, if I want to be sure of what phone I'm talking about, I can go here, and yeah, EEA is the ending of the MAC address, so it looks correct. I can compare the whole thing, and you do the same thing on the real phone. You can go into the settings and check the MAC address, or also maybe look underneath the phone and look at the physical paper MAC address on there. Okay, so this is one interesting thing now. Now, we're not going to be adding a phone for the GUI, so how do we do it? It's actually quite simple here. We can go MAC-address, and I'm just going to copy this here. The easiest way that I think when you first see it, and you're going to divide it into 4. This is the format that you have to add it in. So just like this. So we've now added this phone. So one more thing though, guys, we want to have the phone number now. We haven't associated our ePhone DN1 of ePhone 1, right? So up here, right, I type ePhone 1, and I type number 477. So if you look here, the number's not there, right? So we're not done just yet. But what I can do is type restart, because I'm already in ePhone 1. If you look here, I typed ePhone 1. That puts me with an ePhone 1. I've now associated the MAC address. So that's how we registered the phone. So watch this. I'm going to restart it. Right, we can restart it manually, and you'll see what I mean. It should come back up in about 5 seconds here, and you should see that it has the phone number that we're talking about. Sorry guys, there's one more thing I didn't do though, actually. Sorry, I didn't give it button 1. So just a reminder here, button 1 is the button number 1 literally on the phone here. Okay, and then the one after the colon is ePhone DN1, which I already said. Oh, okay, let's fix that. Let's get this phone rebooted one more time. Okay, good. So now we have this extension here, 4777. Okay, so now we're back here. And we got our 4777 number on the phone here. So we have the right extension. We know it's on R2. And let's see now in a second here, can we make the call work now that we have our Dialpeer? No, it doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is that it doesn't know how to actually reach there. Okay, there's no Dialpeer. And so we have to make our Dialpeer. And so the way we do that is with dial-peer voice, and then we have our tag 7000 and then space VoIP. And so at the moment it's actually doing nothing, right? That's just our tag. But we want to have the right convention, as I call it. We want to be in the 7000 range. The tag is a name. It could be 5 or it could be 6, but I think it should make sense. We want it to be so that just by looking at the name tag of the Dialpeer, we're going to know what it's for, and that's why I'm going to call it 7000. Okay, so when we hit enter, we need a few things. We need a destination pattern. Okay, what's the pattern? Well, it has to be something that's going to understand that it's for 7861. But I don't want to type a whole bunch of numbers here each time. Okay, so how do we make it so it's for all of the 7000 range? This is what is called the destination pattern. Like, we could hard code it. I could type 7861, but it's assumed that that this R1 should be handling all the numbers between 7000 and 799. So how do we do that? Okay, we put 3 dots there. And if you understand regular expressions, each dot can be anything between a 0 and a 9. Okay, so that will take care of our 7000 range, and basically that's all we need at this point. But there's one more thing. We need what's called a session target. So session target is what I call the destination, and the destination is where we need to talk to. So what we said so far is that we're calling our Dialpeer, the tag 7000 is a type VoIP, we know that. Our destination pattern is 7 triple dot, right? That is going to match all those numbers. But now we need one more thing. How do we do our session target? Okay, just like this. Session space target IPv4 colon and the IP of our R1 router, right? What is that? It is 192.168.5.1. And that's it. So can we call now? Uh-oh, it's still not working. So why is it not working? Can I ping the router? That's the first thing you might ask, right? Is there connectivity? Let me try and ping .1. Okay, it looks like there is connectivity. Then why can't the call go through? Well, the thing to understand is that Dialpeers are 2 ways, right? There's no way to have that communication if R1 doesn't know how to talk to R2. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is create a Dialpeer on R1 for how to reach back to this 4000 range. So we're going to do pretty much the opposite, but in the same way. Okay, as you can probably see, before I made this video, I actually did have a Dialpeer that was working. I've taken it off now to recreate it, and we're going to do it again though. Dial-peer voice 4000 VoIP. So the same idea, but once again though, that's for the 4000 range, so I chose the tag 4000. Once again, it could have been 4, it could have been 2, any unused tag is what I could have used. So put our destination pattern down there, same idea, 4 triple dot. I'm assuming that, that to get to R2, all the numbers in the 4000 range would be handled by R2. Okay, and then session target. Well, session target is going to be the opposite. Now, R1's IP is .1. R2's IP is going to be .200. So we just have to do the very opposite. Right? Session target IPv4 192.168.5.200. Okay, and now can they call? Let's take a look. Okay, yeah, it's ringing out, right? I can see on the other side here that it's getting a call from 4777. Okay, I can answer it. The call is working. We do have connectivity, so the phones are working. And so we basically, this represents kind of calling from site to site, right? And this may be common in many offices. Basically, if you're remote, right, you might have certain extension ranges or numbers that are reachable at a different CME router at a different location. Okay, but let's just double check. Can I call back the other way? Yes, I can. Right, so we have calls in both directions, and we have calls that work. So that's the basics of Dialpeers. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope that this is the basis for you of building a much larger solution than